If humans were perfectly rational, fake news wouldn't exist. If our minds were entirely logical, propaganda wouldn't work. And if human decisions were purely based on facts, half of the discussions on the internet would simply disappear. But the reality is different. Our brains weren't designed to find the truth. They were designed to survive. For thousands of years, our ancestors needed to make quick decisions. Thinking fast was more important than thinking perfectly. And to achieve this, the brain developed mental shortcuts. These shortcuts are called cognitive biases. They help make quick decisions, but they also distort reality. Today we're going to explain the main cognitive biases that control how you think, decide, and interpret the world. And after you notice these patterns, you'll start seeing them everywhere. The first and perhaps most powerful cognitive bias is confirmation bias. It works simply. We tend to seek information that confirms what we already believe, and ignore information that contradicts our ideas. Imagine someone who believes that a certain food is extremely healthy. This person will look for articles that confirm this idea. When they find studies that disagree, they are ignored, or considered less reliable. This phenomenon occurs in politics, science, religion, and even relationships. When we already have a formed opinion, our mind begins to act like a lawyer. We are not looking for the truth. We are trying to prove that we are already right. The problem? The more confident we are in our beliefs, the harder it becomes to change them. Our brains don't accurately assess probability. They assess ease of recall. This is called availability bias. If an event is easy to remember, it seems more common. For example, many people believe that shark attacks are relatively frequent, but in reality they are extremely rare. Why then do they seem common? Because they are highly publicized. Dramatic images are etched into memory. And when we think about the risk, these images appear immediately. Our brains confuse strong memory with high probability. That's why sensationalist headlines work so well. They occupy space in your mind. Anchoring bias occurs when the first piece of information we receive strongly influences our decision. Imagine you enter a store. A watch costs $1,000. Next to it, another one costs $400. The second one seems cheap, but if the first one had never existed, $400 would seem expensive. The first number acts as an anchor, even if it's completely arbitrary. This effect is constantly used in negotiations, marketing, sales, salaries. The first reference shapes all subsequent decisions. Even when we know this, we continue to be influenced. The Dunning-Kruger Effect describes a curious phenomenon. People with little knowledge of a subject tend to overestimate their own competence, while experts frequently underestimate how much they know. Why? Because when you know little about a subject, you also don't know enough to realize how much you don't know. It's like trying to assess your own ability without understanding the criteria. The more someone learns about a complex field, the more they realize how much they still don't know, and this generates intellectual humility. This is one of the reasons why very confident people are not always the most informed. Losing hurts more than winning, much more. This phenomenon is called loss aversion. Studies show that the psychological pain of losing $100 is approximately twice as great as the pleasure of winning $100. This influences financial decisions, investments, and even relationships. For example, many investors hold on to bad stocks for too long, because selling would mean accepting the loss. Even when the rational decision would be to exit the investment, our brain prefers to avoid immediate pain, even if this creates bigger problems in the future. The halo effect occurs when a positive characteristic influences our overall perception of someone. For example, if someone is physically attractive, many people automatically assume that this person is also intelligent, competent, trustworthy, even without real evidence. The brain creates an overall impression based on a single characteristic. This effect influences job interviews, elections, celebrities, social media. A single positive characteristic creates a halo, and this halo distorts our evaluation. Humans are social creatures. For thousands of years, survival depended on being part of a group. That's why the bandwagon effect exists. When we see many people believing in something, we tend to believe it too. This explains phenomena such as fads, financial bubbles, viral trends, popular opinions. When something seems popular, our brain interprets it as a sign of credibility, even when the group is completely wrong. This bias occurs when we only analyze success stories and ignore all the cases that failed. A famous example happened during World War II. Engineers analyzed planes returning from battle. They observed where the bullet holes were. The initial idea was to reinforce those areas. But a statistician noticed something important. Those planes survived. The areas without holes were probably where the planes that didn't return were hit. This analytical error is survivorship bias. The same thing happens in business. When we hear stories of successful entrepreneurs, we rarely hear the thousands of stories of failure. The human brain prefers stability. Change requires mental energy. That's why the status quo bias exists. We tend to prefer keeping things as they are, even when changes would be better. This bias appears in decisions such as continuing in bad jobs, maintaining harmful habits, avoiding new opportunities, not because it's rational, but because change requires effort. Perhaps the greatest cognitive bias of all is this: believing that other people are biased, but we are not. Almost everyone believes they are more rational than average. But the reality is simple. We all have biases. They are part of how our brains work. They are not individual flaws. They are consequences of evolution. The goal is not to eliminate them. That would be impossible. The goal is to recognize them, because the moment you recognize a bias, you create a small distance between automatic thought and conscious thought, and that small distance is where better decisions begin to emerge.